Imagine a world where everything taught about human civilization, the slow rise from caves, the dawn of farming, the first cities, is a gentle story crafted to keep unease at bay. Beneath it lies a deeper truth, one far older and more fragile. Humanity did not ascend just once. It rose 7 times, and 6 times it vanished completely. From the earth itself come the first hints, emerging like quiet warnings. Monumental structures appear without warning, fully perfected, no rough drafts or gradual steps, just flawless engineering inserted into history as if from another time. Ancient calendars track stars with precision that defies their era. Megaliths point to constellations watched across millennia, built by people supposedly still mastering stone tools. The standard timeline strains under the weight. Deeper layers reveal sharper breaks. Deserts hold ruins unclaimed by any known culture. Mountains conceal stones cut beyond ancient capabilities. Oceans hide cities in perfect grids, and under soil older than our records lie objects that should never exist, fragments of craft sealed where only rock and root belong. Researchers label them misdated or mistaken, yet the outliers persist, all hinting at organized power from before recorded time, ended suddenly, leaving only riddles avoided by scholars. What force could wipe a world so clean that even its name dissolves? Not fire alone, not flood alone, not ice or endless night, but all together, in sequence, a planetary reset from forces predating us. It happened 6 times before. Picture history not as a line, but cycles, peaks of brilliance, then shattering falls. Survivors retreat to wild places, clutching half-understood knowledge. Their heirs rebuild, convinced they start anew, when truly they inherit ruins. Myths suddenly align, flood tales, sky-fire legends, wandering teachers of forbidden skills, not fables, but scarred memories handed down through ages. We stand as the 7th. Traces of the prior 6 linger under seas, sands, peaks, even in our genes, evidence no authority welcomes, for it upends progress as pinnacle. If 6 worlds crumbled before, one question lingers: why, and what stirs for ours? Let the journey unfold slowly, layer by layer. Now, if you're using this video to fall asleep, that's exactly why I make these. So maybe subscribe and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. I always check the comments, and it's fascinating seeing Sydney at breakfast and Lisbon at bedtime, all at once, all of us wondering about the same mysteries. The Earth is a vast, ancient vault, a silent guardian keeping its deepest, most astonishing truths locked within layers untouched by the rush of centuries, where geological time flows not like a violent torrent, but like a deep, slow, and almost motionless river. And it is in this profound, timeless silence that our first and greatest riddles lie sealed. Deep in the coal seams, vast dark deposits that were formed over 300 million years from prehistoric ferns and colossal trees, epochs long predating the very notion of humanity, miners have pulled forth small, strangely heavy metallic cubes, their geometric faces perfectly flat, their edges unnaturally sharp, giving the impression that they were cut by a precision tool mere days ago, despite their ancient casing. Beside these cubes, completely out of place, rest intricate gears and tiny mechanisms, their teeth meshing with a fine precision that no random geological movement or natural erosion could ever forge. These metallic items remain utterly encased in rock that science unequivocally dates to the Carboniferous period, epochs preceding Homo sapiens by unthinkable lengths of time. No human hand should have touched such primordial strata, yet here they rest, silent, sealed, and undeniable. Not far in the geological record, in Cretaceous limestone dated between 65 and 145 million years old, full of the ancient sea creatures, powerful hammers emerge. Their iron heads show a level of metallic purity, often reaching 99%, free of the impurities and slag that ancient forges of the known historical age simply could not remove, a purity only achievable through modern industrial processes. The handles of these hammers bear fossilized wood fibers, gripped as if in daily use during a time when great dinosaurs still roamed the continents. We also find smooth, perfectly symmetrical brass vessels, locked immovably inside geodes formed under conditions of extreme pressure and heat over eons. Furthermore, complex components resembling spark plugs, threaded cores with internal ceramic insulators, surface from volcanic tuff layers determined to be over 500,000 years aged. Mainstream accounts strain to dismiss these findings, invoking explanations of modern contamination, deliberate and elaborate frauds, or fundamental flaws in the radiometric testing methods like carbon-14, uranium-lead, or fission track dating. Yet when multiple dating methods all align on the host rock's immense antiquity, the intrusion of these manufactured objects defies all logical explanation. These patterns persist worldwide, not as isolated incidents, but as a global chorus of anomalies. The Coso artifact, discovered deep within California ash, confirmed non-modern through complex X-ray analysis. The London hammer in Texas limestone, its handle petrified and preserved around the impossible iron head. Fragments echoing the high-level mechanics of the Antikythera device and the electrochemical principles of the Baghdad battery, suggesting a profound understanding of metallurgy and mechanics far predating the Bronze Age. Metallurgy reveals consistent micro-machining traces, perfect right angles, and highly balanced alloys across these global finds. Reports surface in journals only to quickly fade, and museums quietly shelve them without explanatory labels. Coincidence strains credibility when such finds span Africa, Europe, and Asia. These relics whisper of highly advanced knowledge, sophisticated metallurgy, and complex mechanics that flourished eons earlier, surviving multiple cataclysms only by being preserved in the enduring embrace of stone while their creators utterly vanished. Such relics act as faint, desperate signals from deeply lost eras, fragments of forgotten devices or instruments outlasting their world. They seek no hurried proof, merely a steady, open gaze into the terrifying depths of geological time and history. Ahead, the low, steady murmurs ascend from submerged, forgotten realms. The first place a vanished world would disappear is under the sea. For most of human memory, coastlines have felt permanent, but on the scale of the planet, they move like breathing. During the last ice ages, oceans were hundreds of feet lower. Vast plains, river valleys, and harbors that once held life now lie in darkness beneath the waves. If earlier civilizations hugged those ancient shores, their streets and temples would be sleeping there now, beyond the reach of ordinary eyes. As sonar began to map the ocean floor, strange shapes emerged from the blue silence. Off the coast of Japan, divers approached a formation near Yonaguni that at first looked like a simple rock shelf. But the closer they swam, the stranger it became. Massive steps rose in perfect increments. Platforms met at clean right angles. Long terraces stretched out like avenues. Nature can carve beauty, but it rarely carves symmetry. Layer after layer of stone rose in neat, measured blocks, as if an entire complex had been chiseled from a single slab and then drowned by a forgotten tide. Elsewhere, in warm, shallow waters near ancient trade routes, other ghosts appeared. Off the coast of India, scanning equipment traced the faint outline of a grid on the seafloor. Walls ran in parallel lines. Intersections formed precise corners. Carved pillars lay toppled in the sand, their surfaces smoothed but still holding the suggestion of patterns and symbols. Old legends spoke of a shining coastal city swallowed in a single night. For generations, it was called myth. Now, in the gloom below, the layout of a real city seems to echo those stories, as if stone remembered what memory tried to forget. Across the world, similar patterns whisper from beneath the waves. Near island chains that once sat higher and drier, long straight channels cross the seabed where no river should flow. Rectangular platforms sit side by side, too regular for random erosion. In some places, divers describe staircases descending into deeper black, steps worn but unmistakable. In others, broad, flat plazas spread out wider than modern city blocks, their edges lined with blocks that fit together like a puzzle. Each site on its own could be dismissed as a trick of perception, a coincidence of fracture and current. Together, they begin to look like the broken map of a coastline civilization the sea reclaimed. Fishermen, who work these waters every day, sometimes pull more than fish from their nets. Carved stones rise tangled in lines. Pieces of sculpture, unrecognizable but clearly shaped, come up coated in algae and barnacles. In rare cases, entire fragments of walls appear, fitted stones still bound together by their own weight. These do not speak in the language of theory. They speak simply by existing, by being where nothing man-made is supposed to be. Oceanographers label some of them natural oddities. Archaeologists hesitate because accepting them means accepting that history might be deeper than the dry land record allows. Ancient stories have been telling this tale all along. Island peoples remember lands their grandparents walked on that now lie beneath the surf. Coastal tribes recall villages and forests swallowed as the shoreline crept inland. Myths from far-flung cultures describe cities lost to sudden floods, towers and temples vanishing under a rising, unstoppable wall of water. For centuries, these stories were treated as symbolic. Now the drowned terraces and gridded plains lie almost exactly where those voices said they would be. If there were civilizations along those old shores, the sea has not been kind to them. Wood rotted, metal corroded, cloth and paper dissolved without a trace. Only the heaviest stones survived, too dense to be scattered by waves, too stubborn to grind entirely into sand. What remains on the seafloor looks less like grand capitals and more like foundations, basements, harbor walls, the bare skeletons of something once alive with light and sound. The most unsettling part is not that such places might have existed, but how completely they were forgotten. A city can drown, a culture can scatter, but knowledge usually travels with its survivors. It moves inland, carried in stories, rituals, and skills. For so much of that knowledge to vanish, something more than water must have swept through their world. It suggests not just a flood of the oceans, but a flood of time, a reset so total that only stone in the deepest silence could endure. If these submerged ruins truly belong to earlier civilizations, then our own timeline grows longer, more layered, and less stable than it appears. We are not the first people to build along welcoming coasts and trust the calm horizon. We may simply be the latest. And as our own cities of glass and steel glitter beside modern seas, the thought lingers like a distant echo from the deep. Somewhere below, other lights once shone, other voices once laughed and sang, before the water came. For most of our lives, the world feels stable. Seasons follow one another, cities grow, generations come and go under the same familiar sky. It is easy to believe that history is a straight line, a slow climb from simple tools to satellites. But the planet does not move in straight lines. It turns in cycles. It tilts and wobbles. Its climate drifts, snaps, and resets. When we pull records from ice, from mud at the bottom of the sea, from ancient shorelines carved into rock, a different story begins to appear, one written in layers instead of words. Inside polar ice, thin bands of dust and ash mark years when the sky darkened. Temperature lines spike and crash, showing moments when warmth fell away almost overnight. In ocean sediments, sudden changes in tiny fossils reveal times when currents shifted and ecosystems collapsed in what feels like an instant. Riverbeds appear where there should be none, then vanish, replaced by signs of drought or flood. Again and again, the record shows long periods of calm interrupted by sharp breaks, as if someone turned a page and the planet became a different book. Ancient stories, told long before satellites and sensors, echo those breaks in human language. In one land, people remember a time when the sun dimmed and the sky glowed a strange metallic color. In another, elders speak of a burning rain that fell from above, setting the ground on fire. Some traditions describe years without summer, when crops failed and hunger spread like a shadow. Others tell of a wall of water rising from the horizon, swallowing fields, villages, and entire coasts in a single terrible night. These tales come from cultures separated by oceans and ages, yet the patterns repeat: darkness, fire, flood, cold, and the struggle to begin again. It is tempting to call such stories metaphors, moral lessons wrapped in drama, but taken together, they resemble different witnesses describing the same kind of event from different angles. A volcano erupting with enough force to blot out the sun, a fragment from space striking the ocean and throwing walls of water across continents, ice caps melting or surging outward, shifting sea levels by hundreds of feet. To the people living through it, there would be no technical explanation, only a sense that the world itself had turned against them. In these moments of upheaval, entire civilizations could vanish faster than our normal sense of time allows. A city dependent on predictable seasons can crumble in a few failed harvests. A culture built on trade can fall apart in a storm that destroys its ports. If disasters arrive in chains rather than one at a time, the damage compounds. Fire leads to smoke. Smoke cools the air. Crops die. Famine brings unrest. Plagues follow weakened bodies. Those who survive often do so by leaving everything behind. Imagine standing on a hillside, watching the lowlands where your town once stood slip under rising water. There is no ship big enough to carry everyone, no harbor far enough to escape uncertainties. You take only what you can remember, stories and skills light enough to carry in your mind. Your grandchildren grow up in a smaller world, focused on staying alive. To them, the great works of the past are distant legends. To their descendants, the legends become myths. In just a few centuries, an entire age can narrow down to a handful of tales about a golden time lost beneath the sea or buried under ash. When we look at the physical record and the human stories side by side, a pattern emerges. Civilizations do not simply creep upward and stay there. They rise quickly once conditions are right, then face tests far beyond their control. Some adapt, some do not. The ruins we find on mountaintops and in deserts may be the bones of those that failed. The unexplained jumps in technology, where complex architecture and astronomy appear seemingly out of nowhere, might be the fingerprints of survivors rebuilding with fragments of older knowledge. If our world has already watched multiple cycles of rise and collapse, then our own time sits inside that rhythm, not outside it. We are not the first to build systems that span the globe. We may not be the first to feel so confident that nothing can truly threaten us. The atmosphere does not argue. The ice does not reassure. They simply record. Somewhere, far in the future, another mind could read the layers forming right now and see them as the warning signs before a turn. For now, we live between beats in that long, slow pulse. The lights are on. The networks hum. The sky above our cities still seems calm. But in the background, the planet continues its quiet cycles of tilt, orbit, and change. The question that drifts through this silence is not whether catastrophe is possible, but how many times the story has already been told, erased, and told again in slightly different words. And if humanity has walked this path before, the next logical question follows like a shadow. What traces of those earlier journeys did we carry with us into this age, hidden not in stone or story, but within ourselves? The Earth is not only a destroyer, it is also the most meticulous and unforgiving record keeper, ensuring that when a world ends, the instruments of its demise are sealed into perfect, silent archives, waiting deep beneath the surface for millennia. The ice cores drilled from the frozen heartlands of Greenland and Antarctica are the true scrolls of the deep past, offering a layer-by-layer history of every atmospheric violence, every drought, and every cosmic blast that has ever struck the planet. Within their diamond-hard frozen pages, scientists consistently find sudden, impossibly sharp spikes of sulfur and specific isotopes of platinum and iridium, telltale chemical signs that can only be explained by a cataclysmic supereruption or the impact of a fragmented comet striking the atmosphere. These chemical signatures, preserved instantly in the water that turned to hard ice, are the official, undeniable documentation of global fire, written in atmospheric chemistry and locked beneath miles of pure white snow, a testament to events so devastating they are recorded by the very air that once sustained life. We can trace the sudden onset of years of twilight, where sunlight barely broke through the toxic haze, matching the mythic long night found in scattered oral traditions. But the most unsettling archives are the dust veils themselves. After a major impact event or a colossal volcanic plume, a fine metallic dust, the pulverized remnants of an annihilated world and its cosmic assailant, is distributed across the entire globe, settling out slowly to form a thin, dark shroud. This dust, now sealed within the geological strata and known as the KT boundary or other similar markers, acts as a planetary fingerprint, marking the precise year and the terrifying nature of the Great Collapse. This layer confirms that the air itself became a toxic, opaque weapon, turning day into years of perpetual dusk, systematically erasing the photosynthetic life that fed the civilizations below, leaving behind a sterile and silent planet, waiting to begin its slow, arduous process of renewal. When stones crumble and stories fade, the last place a vanished world can leave its mark is in the bodies of those who survive it. Every person alive today carries a record inside, written not in ink or carved in rock, but coded in strands of DNA. Most of that code speaks of ordinary struggles, how ancestors adapted to cold or heat, new foods, new diseases. But scattered within it, like faint handwriting between the lines, are patterns that do not fit the simple tale of one single rise from caves to cities. Genetic studies have revealed tiny groups of people around the world who share unusual traits that do not closely match their neighbors. They live in highlands and on coasts, in islands and remote valleys, with no simple link connecting them. In a few of these groups, scientists find enhanced resistance to low oxygen, as if their ancestors spent generations at great heights or in harsh, thin air. In others, there is a quiet advantage in stamina, the ability to endure long effort with less strain. More curious still, brain scans in some carriers show subtle differences in regions tied to spatial awareness and orientation, as if their minds were naturally tuned to maps, stars, and shifting landscapes. These traits could be accidents, random quirks that happened to cluster by chance, yet they appear not as isolated mutations, but as bundled sets, arriving together like a package from a distant sender. They show up in communities whose oldest stories are filled with journeys, families fleeing floods into mountains, sailors pushed far inland by storms, wanderers crossing drowned lands that no longer exist on modern charts. In their songs and ceremonies, there are fragments of navigational knowledge, sky lore, and seasonal timing far older than any written calendar. Some researchers have tried to tie these patterns to known events. Maybe they arose during the last ice age, when small bands of humans were forced to become extraordinary just to survive brutal winters and thin air. Maybe they came from interbreeding with other human-like species that adapted to extreme environments. Those explanations answer part of the puzzle, but not all of it. The distribution of these traits often ignores simple geography. Populations thousands of miles apart, separated by oceans and millennia, share almost identical quirks, while their closer neighbors do not. It is as if, long ago, a small group of people scattered outward from a collapsing center, carrying with them not only memories of a lost world, but biological tools shaped by that world. Traits that helped them read the sky when landmarks were gone, traits that allowed them to move quickly through thin air when lower lands were flooded or frozen. Traits that quietly improved their chances of living through violent shifts in climate and landscape. Over generations, as danger faded, those traits dimmed, diluted by time and mixing. Only a faint trace remains, like a watermark seen only when held to the light. Modern life rarely calls on such abilities. Most people do not need to navigate by stars or sense subtle changes in the air. Skyscrapers and satellites handle that for us. Yet in rare situations, mountaineers, deep divers, and explorers still report people who seem uncannily tuned to their surroundings, able to feel direction or weather with an accuracy that defies easy explanation. Whether this is training, instinct, or something older waking up is hard to say. But the possibility lingers that our bodies remember problems our minds have forgotten. If earlier civilizations truly rose and fell, then their final gift to the future would not be intact machines or libraries. Those vanish too easily. Their lasting legacy would be the people who survived, reshaped by crisis, carrying hard-won adaptations forward into quieter ages. In that sense, every person in the modern world may be walking proof that we are not entirely new. We are, at least in part, descendants of those who endured the last great turning of the planet's wheel. The idea that we might hold echoes of forgotten ages in our blood does not prove anything by itself, but it changes the way the past feels. History stops being a straight ladder and becomes a series of spirals, each loop leaving a thin ring in the tree of humanity. Somewhere beneath the surface of everyday life, in the way we respond to fear, to change, to the unknown, there may be shadows of choices made long ago under very different skies. And if our genes can carry faint memories of old catastrophes, then what else might they hold? Perhaps, buried deeper still, are traces of the knowledge those civilizations used to shape stone, track the heavens, and build in harmony or conflict with the forces that eventually destroyed them. If the concrete geological evidence of 6 earlier advanced worlds, their mechanics, their cities, their megalithic markers, lies buried beneath our feet and carved in stone, the greatest mystery is not their destruction, but the terrifying simplicity of why we remember nothing. The answer is the great forgetting, the final, most subtle, and most complete stage of civilizational collapse. It is not sufficient for a physical world to merely perish. The crucial thing is that the memory and understanding of its complexity must be utterly extinguished. This erasure required a deliberate threefold mechanism that targeted not bodies, but knowledge itself. First, there was the destruction of the archive. The universal cataclysms, the world fire, and the global flood specifically and efficiently target paper, wood, papyrus, and unprotected magnetic metals, the primary media of advanced knowledge storage. All libraries burn, and all hard drives rust. Second, there was the death of the librarian. The specialized scientists, the astronomers, the engineers, the metallurgists, the few individuals who truly understood the complex systems that made their world function were annihilated, leaving behind only the lowest common denominator of survivors. These remnants possessed only simple, practical skills necessary for immediate hunter-gatherer survival, ensuring they could keep breathing, but utterly incapable of comprehending the complex ruins they stood upon. Third, and most chillingly effective, was the trauma of the event itself. The suddenness and violence of the collapse induced a massive self-protective cultural amnesia, an epigenetic shock that made subsequent broken generations psychologically incapable of accepting the depth of the previous civilization or the power of its weapons. The survivors focused solely on primitive survival, actively rejecting the very complexity and technology that had led directly to their spectacular doom. The Great Forgetting is thus revealed as the self-protective, yet ultimately detrimental mechanism of a broken species, ensuring that we only remember comforting fragments, myths of gods and magic, while the terrifying technological truth of their self-destruction remains buried, guaranteeing that the seventh civilization remains blissfully ignorant and tragically vulnerable to repeating the exact same destructive arc. The great stone monuments scattered across the world stand as the most visible remnants of something older than the cultures we credit with building them. Pyramids, walls, circles of giants. They draw crowds and cameras, but their true strangeness lies not in size alone, but in the skill woven into every block and angle. These are not the work of people just learning to shape rock. They feel like the final efforts of builders who inherited designs from a time before their own. At Giza, the largest pyramid aligns to true north with an accuracy of 3 arc minutes, better than many modern buildings. Its base covers 13 acres, sides equal within inches over 400 feet. Internal passages encode pi and the golden ratio in dimensions that suggest surveying tools far beyond copper chisels. Beneath the known structure, scans hint at older layers, shafts pointing to stars that shifted position millennia ago. The builders left no sketches, no quarries with half-finished mistakes. It appears complete from the start. Across the ocean, in Peru, Sacsayhuaman's walls rise from stones weighing up to 200 tons each, cut to interlock without mortar, joints so tight a razor blade cannot slip through. Polygonal shapes fit in patterns no two repeat exactly, as if each block was measured to its neighbor on site with instruments lost to time. The Incas who lived there later said they found the base already standing. They added what they could, but the foundation whispered of hands more sure. In Mexico, Teotihuacan's pyramids mirror the orbits of planets, their layout a map of the solar system unknown to farmers with reed pens. The Pyramid of the Sun sits over a cave shaped like a 4-leaf clover, aligned not to solstice sun, but to a star's setting in an ancient sky. In China, pyramid fields hide under soil and trees, bases larger than Giza's, oriented to celestial markers changed by Earth's slow wobble. Ground scans show chambers with blocks machined to mirror finish. These sites share traits that cross continents: massive scale, astronomical precision, stones fitted beyond Bronze Age means. No clear path of learning connects them. Primitive tools give way to perfection without steps in between. Many perch on fault lines or quartz veins, as if placed to capture Earth's subtle energies. Cultures credited with them describe the works as gifts from teachers or gods who came before. If these are echoes of lost knowledge, rebuilt by survivors with fading memory, it explains the sudden leaps. One generation carves rough huts, the next raises observatories tracking precession cycles of 26,000 years. Techniques peak early, then soften over time as skills slip away. The stones endure because they are too heavy for flood or quake to fully scatter, too rooted to erase. Modern machines struggle to match such feats. Lifting granite monoliths demands cranes and engines the ancients lacked. Cutting andesite to puzzle perfection requires diamond bits unavailable then. Yet the monuments stand, silent, against theories that call them ramps and levers alone. They point to a world where engineering flowed from experience, not trial. As we trace these giants, a shadow lengthens. If hands this skilled built before recorded time, what vanished with them? Not just cities or tools, but the understanding that let stone sing with the stars. The next turn reveals those worlds themselves, faint outlines in lands now changed beyond recognition. Before our own age took shape, the Earth may have cradled 6 earlier rises of complexity, each thriving in landscapes now transformed by time and force. Their outlines emerge faintly from geology and scattered remains, like shadows cast by a light long extinguished. In Southeast Asia, the Sunda Shelf once formed a broad land bridge linking Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand during lower seas. Fertile rivers and coasts could have sustained millions in organized settlements. Riverbeds and terraces now submerged hint at harbors and fields lost when ice melted and waters rose. Local legends speak of prosperous realms swallowed whole, their people fleeing to higher ground. Far west, the Sahara bloomed green 12,000 years ago, dotted with lakes, grasslands, and herds. Rock art shows boats, villages, and ceremonies under wetter skies. Radar pierces the dunes to reveal grids and mounds beneath, suggesting hubs that bridged Africa and the Mediterranean until desert claimed them in a slow, choking advance. North across frozen straits, Beringia stretched as a vast steppe between Siberia and Alaska, home to megafauna and human bands during the Ice Age. Temperate enough for long hunts and gatherings, it vanished under rising seas, leaving genetic echoes in northern peoples and tales of endless plains crossed by ancient kin. In the Indus Valley, Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa sprang forth with drains, baths, and uniform bricks, as if planned from a blueprint already drawn. Deeper digs uncover prior layers, smoother and older, pointing to roots predating the visible city. Mediterranean islands like Crete, Malta, and Sardinia hold walls and harbors of cyclopean scale, stonework echoing distant sites. Maritime prowess implied by docks and alignments suggests networks spanning waves, ended by quakes and tides. Deep in the Amazon, LiDAR unveils roads, canals, and platforms sprawling hundreds of miles under canopy, Earth-shaped on a continental scale. Not scattered tribes, but coordinated works tied to soil and sky, buried by jungle after climate turned hostile. Each world shared a sudden end, not gradual fade. Floods submerged shelves, droughts baked valleys, eruptions darkened skies. Survivors scattered with scraps of craft, seeding the next fragile start. These 6 left bones too stubborn for total erasure, whispering that stability breaks on scales beyond human grasp. What force gathered to close each chapter lingers as the next shadow falls. The 6 worlds did not drift into silence. They shattered in moments, leaving patterns too sharp for slow decay. Geological scars mark the blows with distinct stratigraphic markers. vast ash blankets from supervolcanic eruptions like the Toba event 74,000 years ago, extensive flood layers burying coasts in single surges, and ice advances grinding entire landscapes flat. Crucially, each collapse was not random but aligned with the planet's deep rhythms, cycles of tilt, orbital eccentricity, and precession defined by the Milankovitch cycles, far older than humanity. This alignment means that the ends often coincided with climactic instability, especially rapid deglaciation or sudden shifts into cold snaps like the Younger Dryas 12.9 thousand years ago. Such periods create feedback loops. A sudden influx of fresh water from bursting glacial dams disrupts ocean currents, like the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, leading to abrupt regional cooling and drought in other areas. The evidence for these events is found in cryptotephra deposits, isotopic shifts in deep-sea cores, and sharp lines in the sediment record known as extinction boundaries. Survivors faced chains of ruin that transitioned rapidly from physical disaster to systemic failure. A volcanic winter, identified by a spike in global atmospheric sulfates, kills crops, sparking famine. Weakened populations, already genetically tight due to prior population bottlenecks, fall easily to disease or infighting for dwindling resources. As glaciers burst, the resulting eustatic sea level rise, sometimes meters per century, drowned refuges and erased critical coastal infrastructure. Cosmic dust or impacts left traces like the iridium anomaly, scarring the sky and plunging the world into darkness. No single complex culture endured intact. The coastal hubs, relying on sophisticated logistics and centralized governance, vanished first, illustrating the fragility of high complexity. Inland powers choked on dust or drought. The few who lived retreated to caves, highlands, or islands, their numbers bottlenecked to mere thousands, their gene pools tightening around essential survival traits. What unified the ends was their speed and the completeness of the information loss. Stability held for millennia, then snapped. No warning scrolls, complex archives, or institutional libraries survived the environmental pressure. Wood burned, metal rusted, and stone toppled or was covered. The result was the complete annihilation of institutional memory. Only myths persisted, becoming the sole repositories of historical memory. Core details hold across oceans and disparate cultures, a bright golden age, a sudden dark, teachers from the sea, stars that guided through endless night. These narratives, incorporating floods, fires, and celestial events, offer valuable, albeit distorted, paleoclimatological data that often match sediment spikes worldwide, confirming the catastrophic nature of the previous resets. The mechanism feels less random and more like the Earth's geoastronomical heartbeat, striking a highly vulnerable system at its peak complexity. Modern parallels whisper unease. Our interconnected grids span fragile coasts, depend on steady seasons, and trust endless exponential growth. Yet the layers forming now, the Anthropocene markers, mirror preludes to older falls, suggesting we are actively setting the stage for the next reset. The technosphere's signature. Layers forming today include microplastics in reefs, the plastosphere, massive heat-trapped air, greenhouse gases, and unprecedented rapidity in shifting poles. Our civilization is uniquely vulnerable to a singular, high-impact event, such as a large coronal mass ejection, which could induce a cascading grid failure and collapse logistics on a global scale. The stones that outlasted 6 turns stand unmoved, as if waiting to witness the 7th's close. What gathered then gathers again. The alignment of astronomical forces, telluric unrest, and systemic fragility, unseen by the majority until the horizon shifts. Our modern world gleams with lights that pierce the night, networks that span oceans, machines that mimic thought. We call it progress, the highest peak humanity has climbed. Yet if 6 ages rose and crumbled before, we do not stand at the top of a single ladder. We balance on layered ruins, inheriting faint skills and warnings from worlds that outshone ours in ways we barely grasp. The evidence circles back to us. Sudden leaps in our own history, writing, wheels, cities in the Neolithic, mirror the technological jumps seen in older sites like Göbekli Tepe. Astronomy encoded in stone matches tools we rediscover. Myths of sky teachers align with genetic clusters hinting at shared survival, indicating specialized groups were key to reseeding knowledge after previous population bottlenecks. Our cities hug coasts like the drowned ones below. Our specialized farms chase steady seasons like those lost to ash. Confidence in endless advance echoes the complacency before each prior fall, amplified by our reliance on complex, hyper-connected, just-in-time logistical systems which lack the decentralized resilience of earlier eras. Fragility is multiplied by this systemic interdependence. One chain of disruptions, storm, blackout, shortage, or a large coronal mass ejection hitting our unprotected grid, and systems strain globally. Genes stir faintly now. Epigenetic shifts activate old markers as climates wobble, poles wander, and skies thicken, possibly awakening traits for endurance, navigation, and low-light sight. This is not conspiracy, but a process unfolding in labs and ice cores, where physiological adaptations link us back to the survival stresses of past climatic shifts. We build faster than any before, satellites circling like new stars, grids pulsing with energy ancient hands might envy. But the sheer scale and speed of this expansion bind us to the past. Survivors of old cycles left megaliths too vast to topple, and myths too stubborn to silence. Long-term data storage mechanisms built into the landscape. What will we leave? Towers of steel and silicon which decay quickly, or echoes in stone and seed built for millennia? This 7th turn feels different, aware of its own fragility through screens and data. Yet awareness does not halt the wheel. Stability invites scale, scale invites vulnerability. The question hangs quiet. Have we learned enough from the 6 silent before, or do we repeat their arc, brighter but no wiser? Layers build beneath us even now, of plastics, concrete, and greenhouse gases, ready to record whatever comes next. If history truly moves in waves, then every end is also a beginning waiting in the dark. The 6 lost worlds, if they existed, did not plan their own erasure. They lived as we do now, wrapped in everyday concerns, confident that tomorrow would resemble today. Only later did their last survivors realize they had been living in the final calm of an age. That realization did not arrive with thunder. It crept in quietly, through odd seasons, failing skies, and a growing sense that something vast was shifting just beyond the edge of understanding. Our age stands at a similar edge. We can measure more than any people before us: the thinning ice, the warming seas, the restless storms, the subtle drift of magnetic fields, and the brightening haze of our own emissions. We can see our planet from orbit, a fragile sphere streaked with clouds and light. Yet the view from above does not answer the old question, it only sharpens it. Are we witnessing ordinary fluctuations in a living world, or the opening lines of another turning, another reset in a story that has already cycled many times? The answer may never arrive as a single clear moment. There may be no voice, no final warning written across the sky. Instead, there is choice. Earlier civilizations, whatever their nature, left behind hints that they reached great heights without fully respecting the forces beneath them: climate, ocean, rock, and sky. Their stones suggest brilliance, their disappearance suggests blindness. We have the rare chance to hold both truths at once, to recognize our own power and our own smallness before the wheel completes another turn. In the quiet of the night, when screens dim and cities hum like distant seas, it is possible to feel both fear and wonder at this position in time. Fear because nothing we build is guaranteed to last. Wonder because we may be the first people in any cycle to glimpse the pattern while we are still inside it. That awareness is fragile, but it is also a kind of light. If there are echoes of older worlds in our bones and traces of their hands in the stones we study, then we are not simply the end of a line. We are a bridge between what has been and what might yet come. The question that remains is simple and immense. Will we leave behind only ruins and rumors for some distant future to puzzle over, or can we carry forward enough wisdom to soften the next turn of the wheel? For now, the world turns as it always has. Waves rise and fall along familiar shores. Stars move across the sky in patterns our ancestors once traced from memory. Somewhere under the oceans, forgotten walls still stand in the dark. Somewhere in our own hearts, an old instinct listens for changes in the wind. Between those two silences, we live this brief chapter of the seventh civilization, with just enough time to decide what story we wanted to become. Thank you so much for watching our video and supporting the channel. See you in the next episodes, and good night.